Section 10.4, Day 2, take a look at 3 problems today, and they are all similar. They're all trying to find the standard form of a hyperbola given random information. So the first one, find the standard form of a hyperbola where you're given the foci and the asymptotes. Second one, find the standard form of a hyperbola where you're given the vertices and then a point that it passes through. And the third one where you're given the vertices and the asymptotes. And each problem is always a little bit different. The first one is one that you probably will have the most trouble with, or where you may run into a problem to start with. And again, when I'm looking at my information, I try to find the center as quickly as possible. So looking at the foci, I can figure out quickly that the center is the midpoint, and it's at 0, 0. And I'm noticing that it's the x value that is changing. So when I write my standard form of my equation, I'm going to say it's x minus 0, or you can just say x squared divided by whatever, minus y minus 0, or y squared divided by whatever equals 1. Again, I know the positive term has to be x because it's x that's changing. The other thing I notice is that this is a focus, or there are foci in the center. That means the distance between them is c. That means I know c is equal to 10, or c squared is equal to 100. Now overall it doesn't do me any good because this is a squared and this is b squared. So I'm kind of stuck there. Well, so maybe I move on to the asymptotes then. Well, what do I know about the asymptotes? Basically I look at the slope. I know that the slope is equal to 3/4. Coming back to this problem, my slope, if I were to figure it, would be b over a. Again, it's b because that is under the y term. So my slope is going to be b over a is equal to the plus or minus 3/4. Well, that doesn't do me any good. I can't just assume that a is 4 and b is 3. It might be, it might not be. It could be any ratio of things that could simplify down to that. It could be 9 and 12. It could be 15 and 20. I have no idea, so I need to figure that out. So how do I do that? I'm actually going to use this. When you have an equation with 2 variables in it, you can't really solve for one of them specifically. So what do? You come up with a system of equations. C squared just so happens to equal 100, but I also know that c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. Now if you look at these two, you'd say to yourself, I've got 2 equations with the same 2 variables, or a system of equations, that will allow me to solve for a and b. So what do? If you look at that top equation, I can say that b is equal to 3/4 a. The plus or minus won't make a difference here because look what I'm about to do. I'm about to take that and plug it in for b and then square it, so the plus or minus will actually go away. So doing that, I would get 100 is equal to a squared plus 3/4 a squared, so square all of that since it's all multiplied together, it would be 9/16 a squared. Getting myself a common denominator, that's 16/16. 16 plus 9 should give me 25/16 a squared. Multiply by 16, that would give me 1,600. Divide by 25, and that would give me 64 is equal to a squared. And so now I actually know that the number under x squared is 64. The number under y squared, of course, I can quickly figure out. If a squared is equal to 64, plug it in back here, looks like b squared would have to be 36. And there is my equation. Anytime you are given both foci and the asymptotes, it's going to be that situation where you have to set up a system. So you might be one of those things where you just want to tell yourself that if I have both foci and asymptotes, know that that's what I have to do. If I'm given something else, I shouldn't have to do that. It's the only time I should have to use that system of equations. Alright, the second one, find the standard form of an equation with a hyperbola with vertices of 0, 4, 0, 0, and it passes through. Again, the vertices are going to help me figure out the center quickly. So I can see that that is 0, 2. I notice it's the y value that's changing here. So that means the y should be the positive term. So this is going to be y minus 2 quantity squared over some number minus x minus 0, or x squared over some number equals 1. Alright, this was a vertice, or they're both vertices. There's the center. The distance between them would be a, since it's a vertice, and that's 2. 2 squared is 4, and that has to go under the first term or positive term because this is a hyperbola. So the only thing I'm missing is b squared, and they gave you a random point. Remember, anytime they give you a random point, they want you to plug those two numbers in for x and y and solve for what's left. So that probably looks frightening, but when you take it and square it, it's going to make it much easier. So plugging in -1 for y, I have -1 minus 2, or -3 squared. So that's going to give me 9 over 4. Minus square root of 5 squared should give me 5 over b squared is equal to 1, which I'm going to change to 4 over 4 so I have the common denominator. So continuing to solve, I get -5 over b squared. If I subtract 9/4, I'm going to get -5 over 4. This makes the problem much easier because the numerators are the same, so I can kind of ignore those. They're both negative. I can say b squared is equal to 4. And so I can just take that and plug it in here. So my final answer should be y minus 2 quantity squared over 4 minus x squared over 4 equals 1. And there's my equation. Alright, the last one, they are giving me the vertices again, so that should tell you, hey, find the center as quickly as possible. It's also going to tell you what A is. So center is 0, 2 again. If I look at the distance between the center, sorry, that should be 3, 2. So used to doing 0, seems like we always have 0 for one of the numbers. If I look at the distance between either of the vertices and the center, it's 2, which means I know a squared is 4. Notice it's y that was changing again. So this should be y minus 2 quantity squared over a squared minus x minus 3 quantity squared over b squared equals 1. Only thing I'm missing is b squared. They gave me the asymptotes, and the only thing I care about on the asymptotes is the slope. I don't really care about the y-intercept. So I know the slope is supposed to equal plus or minus 2/3. Well, now look back at your problem. According to our problem, here's why my slope should be 2 over b. Remember, it's always the denominator under y divided by the denominator under x, because it's rise over run. So we're saying that this should be 2 over b. And now you just have to cross multiply and solve, and this one again is fairly easy because they're both the same in the numerator. It's going to give you 3. Square, it's going to give you 9. Your answer would be y minus 2 quantity squared over 4 minus x minus 3 quantity squared over 9 equals 1. There's not a lot of work to show for these. Like, you can easily see that in your head. You can easily figure that in your head. But please write that down for me so that I can follow what you're doing. If you make a mistake like I almost did putting a 0 there, it makes it really easy for me to see that, oh yeah, you just made a little mistake there. Or if you said that this was a is equal to 4, I might look at this and say, oh, you look at the difference between those two to get the 4, and easy mistake. And then I would look at your work to see if this number matched with the rest of your work. All right, that is your homework help for 10.4 day 2. Feel free to come in if you need extra help.